guys and gals, Never here from Drinkwing Gaming, and Sunny Mount Twitter, the Gaming Drag. Today I'm coming back at you with a Let's Play episode of Arches. That's right, we're diving right back into this festering hellscape, so let's go ahead and jump right back in, shall we? Alarm chain, you were up, and let's go. Oh, man. Cameron stays under the table, the Xanax having kicked in fully by this point, leaving the coyote in a bit of a quiet, stoic haze. His sobbing has trailed off, not much emotion left in him, just feeling numb. His trip is getting more and more intense, and he knows that the peak is nearing, maybe in another half an hour. Still, he begins to notice things that he's sure aren't part of his trip. A presence not too far away, one that he knows very well. Dev. With no idea what he's doing, he instinctively reaches out toward that warm energy. He's interrupted by another presence he doesn't recognize, one that's much closer. Cameron gets on his paws and knees, looking out from under the table. This vision is definitely different than anything he's experienced before. Unlike the dreamlike, reality-altering psilocybin, the vision he's entered has a clarity to it, like he's not even tripping at all. The figure of someone appears before him, and Cameron knows everything immediately. Benjamin Kowalski, a rabbit born in 1977, ran away from his Pueblo home when he was 16. For several years, he moved from city to city, sometimes in neighboring states before settling in Peyton. He stocked shelves at a grocery store, and the extra money he saved up would fund his weed supply. Brian was his dealer. In September 1998, he agreed to let Brian take him to his trailer home in Echo. He was promised 2 ounces of weed in exchange for 1 night of lovemaking, as the bear had put it. Benjamin wasn't gay, and even if he was pretty sure Brian wouldn't be his type. 2 ounces was a lot, though, way too good to pass up. After 4 days of torture, Brian accidentally strangled him for too long, and Benjamin didn't regain consciousness. Of course, Brian planned on killing him anyway, so he did. The bear was only disappointed that he didn't get a few more days with him. Timothy Esposito was a skunk born in 1985 in the Midwest. His hometown was a large industrial city, one that had been in decay for his entire life. So he transplanted to Mesa, and in May 2005, that was where he attended a BDSM-themed event in an unused warehouse. He liked breath play, and so did Brian, so they fooled around a bit. He didn't much like Brian, but the bear liked him a lot. Brian liked him so much, in fact, that he followed the skunk as he walked home after the event and kidnapped him on an empty street. Timothy was strong and almost escaped multiple times, once managing to leave the trailer before getting caught just a few dozen feet from the dirt road. Brian continued their breath play, except now it wasn't play at all. After 2 weeks, Brian again suffocated his victim for too long. This time, Brian thought he was fairly successful in keeping his victim alive that long. Daniel Gallegos was a ferret born in 1996. He was from the Sonoran capital. He was staying with his family in Mill City to work a summer job. This is dark. Good God, Brian. He was saving up money for his university tuition. In August 2014, days before he was meant to head back to Sonora, he met Brian outside a club before being kidnapped and driven to Echo. Brian was able to keep him for an entire month, and even though a few of Brian's customers had seen him tied to the torture rack, no one said a thing. Eventually, Brian seemed to decide he'd gotten all he could out of the ferret. He bludgeoned Daniel to death with an old tire iron, just because he wanted to try something different. The bear couldn't believe how long it took, how hard he had to hit the kid before he finally stopped moving. Cameron! Cameron is jolted back to reality as he yanked up by his shirt so he's not even touching the floor. Brian's paws hold the front of his shirt while shaking him violently. What? What is it? Cameron kicks around to try and get his feet on solid ground again. Despite being almost overwhelmed by the numbing calm of Xanax, it's not enough to stop the primal fear Cameron has of this bear. Especially not after seeing the horrors he committed on those men. What he'd just seen was condensed, distilled into an easy-to-follow series of events, but all the while he'd absorbed all the tiny details, too. He knows Brian promised these men many things, that he'd only keep them for 1, 2, 3 more days before letting them go. That if they'd just been a little more quiet, he'd let them go. But Cameron knows none of those promises were kept. The visions had been so real that to Cameron it felt like he'd been there for everything they went through. Luckily, he hadn't felt anything. It was as if he was in the room with them. This room. Brian seems to gain some control over himself and lets go of the coyote. Cameron isn't able to stand on his weak, shaking legs and sits down heavily on the ground, looking up at the looming bear. Kept calling your name and you wouldn't answer. Told you to let me know if the visions were starting. I couldn't. Brian waits, looking more impatient the more Cameron stammers, which only makes him stammer more. Swear to fucking God, why do all you become whimpering little dipshits the second I lose my cool for like a second? He reaches down and Cameron cringes as he's yanked up to his feet again. It's clear that Brian wants him to keep standing this time, so he does, steadying himself against the table behind him. Quit that crying! He does his best to stop, but the sobs keep coming. Brian, the visions, the people he just felt. It's not an easy thing to just shrug off. I said quit, not be quieter. Cameron's mouth dries up even more. His tongue now sandpaper against the roof of his mouth as fear helps shock him into a statue-like state. Cameron knows he owes a lot to the sedative right now. Without it, he wouldn't be able to stop, and Brian might kill him. That's better, but faster next time, got it? Okay. Cameron opens his mouth to answer, but finds himself yanked forward suddenly, only to come to a horrible jarring stop as the bear slams his knee in the coyote's torso. Cameron watches the luminous arches writhe about, convulsing almost like they're mirroring the coyote's inner turmoil. The knee is so big compared to himself that it seems to cover most of his stomach. You can thank your boyfriend for that one. He still earned you one more. Brian finally pulls back, and Cameron crumples to the ground, unable to process what Brian is saying. Not that he'd be able to understand it anyway. One second, y'all. Coffee time. Alright, guys and gals, and we are back. Let's go ahead and jump back into it, shall we? Alrighty. Brian finally pulls back, and Cameron crumples to the ground, unable to process what Brian is saying, not that he'd be able to understand it anyway. The coyote lets out guttural groans over and over again. Was that your saying? Brian taunts him from above, and Cameron responds with a whooping gasp, pressing his face into the floor in agony. I asked you a fucking question! Cameron is lifted into the air again, feeling his feet kick around for purchase on the ground as he once again dangles from his shirt, the fabric stretching to the point that Cameron can hear the threads popping on his collar. Cameron cracks open an eye and sees Brian drawing back a huge paw, and Cameron manages to choke out a few words with a tiny amount of air he's gathered into his collapsed lungs. No, nothing! Cameron wheezes loudly between the words, knowing that this is exactly what Brian likes. But how can he stop himself? He's not even sure if stopping himself will help. Maybe that will only trigger Brian into hurting him more. But to Cameron's relief, the bear pauses, then slowly drops his fist. Cameron sees the wild look in Brian's eyes gradually leave as he stares at the gasping coyote in his grasp. Good. Guess I saved the other for later, then. The bear lets go, and Cameron slumps back to his knees, curling up again in the fetal position. Now, what was it you saw? He didn't feel any pain, but now he does. Speak up, Arturo. The whole class needs to hear you. He's in front of 20 curious, attentive eyes while his paws shake, almost making his papers rattle. He's had less than a year to learn a new language, and now they expect him to give an entire book report. He'd give anything to be in his room, gaming on his brand new PlayStation 2. But first, he has to figure out how to survive these next 5 minutes. He's playing on his PlayStation in his dorm room when Maria walks in. Hey, beautiful. You able to get some sleep? He doesn't look up from his game. Oh, you show know my overflow toe. That makes him look up. Huh? She looks confused, frustrated. Born and sworn and to born and forlorn? He puts down the controller and stands up. Baby, what? Arturo installs a lock on the medicine cabinet. He helps her eat healthy. He helps make sure she goes to bed at the right time. Whenever she feels a mood swing approaching, high or low, they prepare together. Maria once cried and told him that she wasn't worth it, that he should find someone that isn't an unpredictable mess. He told her she was definitely worth it, and that they just need to be prepared. Arturo opens his eyes, then cringes at the ache in his head. Not an ache, but an explosion ripping through his skull, his brains, and down his spine. It hurts so much that he lets out a sound that's a half moan, half scream. This time it seems to take even longer for him to understand where and when he is. He had been moving as fast as he could without actually running or jogging, since he isn't even capable of doing that. He guessed he probably made it 2 miles away from Echo, so 7 more to go. He had been just thinking about how he was walking almost exactly like his grandfather did after his stroke, and Arturo had thought, now we'll actually have something to bond over before it happened. A dizzy spell, and like all the others, made him stumble, like he was looking over the edge of a cliff. That anxiety, like he'd never known before, overcame him, making his heart beat so fast Arturo was convinced it was going to explode. He got on his knees, started praying for help, and then... Now he's here on the ground, his nose and forehead stinging from it slammed into the asphalt, and the rest of his body just aches. He's had a seizure, and even though he's never had one before, he knows that's what happened. At least he was on his knees, so his face didn't have far to fall. Still, he's left feeling so exhausted, so defeated that he just wants to lay there. He'd been in a half-dream state, completely confused as he stared around him, memories flicking through his mind like a viewmaster. An hour had passed, maybe two, before he finally understood what his situation was again. He almost wants to go back to that confused state, pretend it's a dream. But now he's crying, because how is he going to take care of Maria if he can barely walk, barely talk? She's good at taking care of herself, but he needs to be there, just in case. He needs to live, and he needs to get better. And while he's glad to be out of Echo, he knows Cameron is still there, and if Devon is gone too, he knows the bear would only want him to save Cameron. Get up, Arturo. All your friends need you. Eventually, he slowly sits up, his paws shaking so badly he's worried he's having another seizure. But eventually, he steadies himself. He needs to stop moving. So, with a deep, shuddering breath, Arturo starts to carefully get up, and that's when he sees it. Oh, shit. Well, I don't know, they're kind of unpredictable. It stares, and Arturo just stares back silently. In that moment, he's sure that he actually did die. That what he assumes was a seizure was really just the end. And now this thing, this embodiment of death, is here to take him. Instead of moving toward him, though, or really acknowledging him in any way, it doesn't move at all. Arturo notices something out of the corner of his eye, and though it's distant, he sees lights. Headlights. Multiple headlights moving in both directions on the landscape. The highway. Arturo looks back, but it's gone. With nothing else to do, he starts to get up. He's sure that he didn't see those lights before he collapsed, but a lot of memory is missing. Several patches between when he was shot and now are unaccounted for, but what he saw was probably just a product of his failing brain. So, wordlessly, he walks in his wide stance with his arms swinging awkwardly, knowing that nothing will be the same again. After telling Brian everything he can remember, the bear seems satisfied. Did you try and talk to him? No, I didn't have to... Brian waves away the coyote's excuse. Just do it next time. I won't interrupt you. Cameron wants to tell the bear that he's not even sure he can talk to them, because after all this time, he's starting to think that he shouldn't even be able to. He can see what's happened in the past, maybe even see what might happen in the future, but that's it. He only sees a record, but if they acknowledge him, communicate with him, then that's something that he doesn't want anything to do with. Devon had said that he doesn't believe in demons, but that's what Cameron thinks they are. All these unexplainable forces that haunt and torment the living. It's all demons. Brian disappears again, and because he doesn't grab the coyote, Cameron assumes he isn't meant to follow him. A minute or two later, Cameron hears a loud snorting sound and he flinches. Then it happens again, and Cameron looks over to see Brian leaning over the counter, head low. Combined with the sound and posture, the coyote knows that the bear is definitely snorting something. He'd been in a similar position many times in the past. Either way, he's not about to ask the bear what he's snorting. He can only hope that it's something that knocks Brian out, or at least slows him down. After sniffing and dabbing at his nostrils, the bear returns to Cameron's side. Well, let's go outside to a spot that I think you'll get better reception or whatever. Before Cameron can fully comprehend what Brian just said, he finds himself being forced over the huge bear's shoulder before being lifted in a fireman's carry. Alright, y'all, I'm going to pause it right there. Thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and check out our Patreon if you can. It always helps. Before I go, I'm going to have a quick shout-out to our lovely bronze tier patrons. Thank y'all for all I do for the channel. We greatly appreciate your support. Thank you to our silver tier patron, Cade Silver, and thank you going above and beyond. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks to our 3 gold tier patrons, Zeke, Toby, and Blue Wolf Alpha. Y'all are awesome. We love you. Thank you for subbing to Ultimate Tier. Anyway, if y'all want to get your names in the credits, get access to all of our Not Safe for Work contents as little as $5. If y'all don't want to donate to our Patreon, you can donate using Super Thanks on YouTube. Anyway, I love you all, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye!